that flag went up in '63. A lot of people say that flag was over that Capitol for years. See, that's part of the knowledge that too many of us don't have. The flag was put up in opposition to Robert Kennedy going down there, fight for equal rights. In essence, I'm putting this flag up as a racist to say, no, we don't believe in equality. And that flag's been flying with inequality for years until 9 people had to get shot in a South Carolina church. So no, it's not about just the flag. It's about a lot more than that. It's about opposing an oppressive and regressive ideology towards African Americans. So you ask yourself, are you a member of a group or organization that's making a difference? Or even better, organizations like my brother John and I can go across everybody up here right now, because they're all involved in numerous organizations. So a good place to start, if you're not involved, is right here with the POP, People's Organization for Progress. Mr. Lawrence Hamm has put in place a relevant organization that is well respected, and they're making a difference. As the founder of, as John said, Plainfield's own Queen City Historic 5K Walk Run for Life, we have an event once a year right here on these steps at City Hall in October, and we'll have one again, our 5th annual, that is geared towards engaging the community and to uplift our youth and to protect our elders. Those are our bookends. And we're looking for volunteers. So if you want another organization, please see me, and we can talk about getting involved with the Plainfield Historic 5K Walk Run for Life. But there's numerous ways you can get involved. Start your own organization. So, as I close, I just want to say we are in a crucial place in history. African Americans are being attacked in overt ways. Not that others aren't, but disproportionately African Americans. The statistics speak for themselves. I got pages and pages, and any of you can go on the internet, and that's proven fact. So let's get up and get involved. Speak out on the injustices, regardless of the source. We're blessed to be part of a government that's for the people, by the people, and of the people. It's not our right to make a progressive change. It's truly our responsibility. Thank you for the time.
All right, thank you, Darryl. That was Darryl Clark from the Progressive News Report on internet radio. As he said, there are some things that need to be stopped, and there are some things that need to start. You know, the march on the 25th is to stop police brutality. The race on October the 17th is to start people working together to support their community. Now, without further ado, I'd like to bring down the man from Montclair, the chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, who needs no introduction, Lawrence Hamm.
Power to the people. This press conference was called today to announce the Million People's March against police brutality, racial injustice, and economic inequality. It will take place on Saturday, July 25th, beginning at 12 noon at the Lincoln Monument in Newark, New Jersey, which is in the heart of downtown Newark at the intersection of West Market Street and Springfield Avenue. This march is being called in response to the murder of unarmed people, men, women, and children, especially African Americans, who comprise 85 or more % of these incidents. This march is being called in response to the murder of unarmed people by the police, the brutalization and use of excessive force by the police, and the violation of people's constitutional rights by the police. It was the murders of people here in New Jersey, like Abdul Kamal, who was killed, shot 15 times by Irvington police, like Kashad Ashford, who was shot 9 times in the head by state troopers and Lyndhurst police, and by Jerome Reed, whose death went viral on a video from a police dash cam. He was getting out of his car, had his hands open and up, and he was shot to death by police in Bridgeton, New Jersey. And then we had the murder of Michael Brown, who was shot and killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri, which I visited recently. And the choking to death of Eric Garner by Staten Island police. And it's not just men who are being killed. We have Rekia Boyd, who was killed by the police. Nyana Jones, who was killed by the police. And on and on and on. So the call from this march initially came out of the pandemic. Epidemic would be too mild a term. The pandemic of police murder, brutality, and torture. Just this year, a case was settled in Chicago, where for years the Chicago police had systematically tortured black men. And that case was settled in Chicago recently. So that would have been enough to call a million people's march. But then we had the terrorist attack, the racist terrorist attack upon the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where a white supremacist wearing the flag of the defeated and overthrown racist apartheid regime of South Africa and the flag of the racist regime of Rhodesia that had been overthrown, and who himself had sported Confederate flags on many occasions, was welcomed into the Emmanuel AME Church, welcomed with open arms by people that were praying. Welcomed into that church, sat with those people for an hour, and then he took out his weapon and he fired again and again and again. And when he ran out of bullets, he dropped the clip, put in a fresh one, and continued to fire, killing 9 people. And how do we know that this was a terrorist attack? Because he left a person alive and he told that person, I'm leaving, I'm not going to kill you because I want you to tell other people what happened here today. That's an act of terror. That's an act designed not just to murder the people there on the scene, but in fact to cause terror throughout the community. And that event by itself would have been enough to call upon 1 million people from all around the United States to gather. So we have this pandemic of police brutality. We have this epidemic of racist terrorist attacks, most notably that happened to the Emmanuel 9. But listen to this. The FBI just came out with a report and said that there were over 280,000 acts of hateful violence in the United States last year. So we're calling this Million People's March because, number one, we want to demand an end to the murder of unarmed people by the police. We're calling this Million People's March because we want an end to the use of excessive force by the police. We're calling this Million People's March because we want an end to the violation of people's constitutional rights by the police. We're calling this march not only for an end to the most heinous acts, but because we want the reform and restructuring of police in the United States of America. First and foremost, we want community control and civilian oversight of all police forces in the United States. That is critical to any effort to reform the police. Recently, in response to a Justice Department investigation and report that found that the Newark police were engaged in the violation of people's constitutional rights. This is what the Justice Department found. That they were violating people's constitutional rights. That they were engaged in the use of excessive force. That they were engaged in discriminatory behavior and disparate treatment of people based on race, because 85% of the stop and frisk were of African Americans. And most of the incidents of the use of excessive force were African Americans. But beyond that, that the police were themselves engaged in criminal behavior. That the drug and gang units of the police were taking the money and drugs from the people that they put in jail and going back and selling it themselves for their own profit. This is what this is not what Larry Hamm found. This is what the Justice Department found. And in response to that, the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Paul Fishman, has called for a federal takeover of the Newark Police Department, called for the implementation of a consent decree, which is a schedule of reforms, and a federal monitor. The Newark police cannot be trusted to run themselves. They need a federal monitor. And so when the new mayor, Ras Baraka, was elected, he did not resist the Justice Department's implementation. He, in fact, embraced it. And after more than a half century of Newark residents demanding a police review board, Ras Baraka signed an executive order creating a police review board in the city of Newark, which will become effective sometime this fall. So we're here to demand civilian and community control of police, civilian oversight, community control. We want the implementation of legislation right here in the state legislature of New Jersey. They got a chokehold bill. They should pass it. Right here in the state of New Jersey, they got a bill to create a special prosecutor for cases of police brutality. We want them to pass it. Right here in the state of New Jersey, in the legislature, in the assembly, there is a bill requiring residency requirements that the police should live in the cities and communities that they patrol. They need to pass that bill. So we call for the passage of those bills in the state legislature, but at the federal level, there's the End Racial Profiling Act, which would make racial profiling by the police a federal offense. We want that bill passed. So we want this and other legislation. There's a whole list of legislative activities, that legislation and bills that we could talk about and will talk about at a later date, but those are some of the most important ones. And that's some of the things we want done with the police, but we can't stop there. We got to deal with this issue of racial injustice in America. And although it is an act of symbolism, we join with our brothers and sisters and with Sister Bree Newsom throughout the South saying that the Confederate flag must come down from all public institutions in the United States of America, not just in front of the Capitol building in South Carolina. Because this is not a South Carolina problem. This is a national problem. I mean, we should not only call for the flags to be taken down from public buildings throughout the United States, the Confederate flag, but right in the Capitol building stands a statue of Jefferson Davis, who was the head of the Confederacy. Why would you take the flag down and leave the head of treason up? The man that was the leader of the treasonous secessionist states. His statue is in the rotunda. It is the official statue of one of the states. Each state is allowed 2 statues. It's the official statue. Jefferson Davis and John Calhoun, one of the authors of American Apartheid, his is the other statue. In fact, we shouldn't be just talking about taking down flags. What we need in America is a cultural revolution to purge American culture of racist symbols and practices. I mean, how could I leave out, how could I talk about the American flag and not talk about the fact that people all over the country are supporting our Native American brothers and sisters in their demand to take the name of the Redskins off the baseball team? We support that. We support that. I was just in Orlando, Florida this weekend, and I was meeting, believe it or not, with Native American teachers. And we made common cause that day. And so I will, whenever I raise these issues that affect us, I'm also going to raise their issues and anybody else's issues who's a victim of racism in this country. And we can't stop with racial injustice. We also have to talk about economic inequality.
Right. All right.
The South, there are more people living in poverty today, not just in the South, in the United States than there was in 1968 when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. There's no reason that in a country this wealthy, so many people should live in poverty. So today, the People's Organization for Progress, we raise once again the demand for a national jobs program to put the 23 million unemployed and underemployed in this country back to work at jobs at a living wage. This was done the last time we had this serious an economic crisis. President Roosevelt had a national jobs program, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. The CCC was a part of that. I don't know how many of y'all are from Newark, New Jersey, but we have a subway that runs in Newark. That subway was opened up in 1938. That was a WPA project. It put thousands of unemployed people in Newark, New Jersey back to work. That subway runs on a drained canal. That used to be a canal where the city subway runs now. Thousands of men were put back to work to drain that canal, lay the foundation, and lay the track. That city subway has run continuously from 1938 to this day. Those are the kinds of programs we need in the United States today to put people back to work. So this is why we're marching on July 25th. And I put forward today a call to everybody in the United States, everybody that is outraged by the murder of those 9 innocent, peaceful, loving people. If you are outraged by the murder of those 9 people in Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, you need to be in Newark. You need to be in Newark. I'm calling upon everybody, red, yellow, black, white, brown. If you were outraged about what happened in Charleston, you should be in Newark on Saturday, July 25th. This is a time when all people of conscience have to stand up. And I want to say 2 more things, and now I'm going to sit down and shut up. A lot of people say, well, why should we march? Well, my question is, what are you going to do on the 25th if you don't march? People say, well, marching is not going to do nothing. The major reforms that we have had in this country in the last 50 years came about through the protests, the marches, the sit-ins, the sacrifice, the fighting of people in the civil rights movement and other movements in the 1960s. Most of y'all that got college degrees, if you from poor and working class family, you wouldn't, and I'm not just talking about black people, you wouldn't have been able to go to those colleges if it wasn't for people marching and protesting. There was no EOF prior to 1966. There was only the GI Bill. It was the Higher Education Act put forward by people like Adam Clayton Powell after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. There was the Higher Education Act. Some of these people walking around here talking about we don't need to march. They live in places where they could not have lived had it not been for the passage of the Fair Housing Act, which was a civil rights bill that came after. So look, if you don't want to march, don't march. But don't try to discourage people who do want to act. There comes a time when sometimes you have to take a stand. You have to show collectively how you feel about a thing. And I believe that this terrible tragedy in Charleston, and the murder of Mike Brown, the murder of Eric Ferguson, and Abdul Kamal, and Kashad Ashford, and Jerome Reed, and many others, that these are signs of the times that we must stand up, brothers and sisters. We must stand up. We must take a stand. When you can't have business as usual. Now listen, if you're going to come to the march, or if you want to get information about the march, go to our Facebook page, Million People's March Against Police Brutality Facebook page. Go to that page, join that page, and then don't stop at joining. They got a little blue button there for you to hit, says invite friends. If you're on Facebook and you hit that button, all your friends on Facebook are going to come up. Then you just punch your friends one by one, and they will be invited. See, we got to use all the tools. You know, I'm still for passing out leaflets, but if Facebook can help get some people here on the 25th, use Facebook. Use Facebook and use Twitter and use Instagram. Look, they didn't have no problem telling us about how the people during the Arab Spring were using social media to make a revolution. So if they can use social media over there to make a revolution, we should use social media over here to make a revolution. And so please go to our Facebook page. We also have a website, Million People's March Against Police Brutality website. And you can also call the People's Organization for Progress at 973-801-0001. But let us not, brothers and sisters, stand idly by when people are murdered praying in their church. If that doesn't make you want to move, take action. I don't know what to take. If that can't make you take action, then I can't do nothing with you. You have to go to somebody with more expertise than me. We're at a time here where these people think they can just walk into our churches and murder people with impunity, you know, while they're praying to God and trying to show love to the rest of the world. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to John briefly to introduce the other speakers.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. That's quite a history lesson. I see Willa Hofield here. She's our local historian. And you still have the Women's History Collective. Okay. Maybe you can say a few words later, but I just would like to introduce some of the people, local folks, who have spoken out and who are supporting this effort. We have from the Frontiers International, the President Lou Slade. I already introduced Darrell Clark, who heads a number of organizations, but he is also the host of the Progressive New Weekly on the internet. We also have Glenn Ford he's the executive editor of the Black Agenda Report. And you met Steve Hatcher. and I know there's an organization who was holding a meeting today, and they dismissed their meeting so that they could come out and support and be here for this press conference. And the name of that organization is
the First Unitarian Society of Plainfield and the UULMNJ, the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministries, is also supporting the march. All right,
thank you. Already said that the Justice and Unity is supporting the march also. But I would like to now bring on Brother Lou Slade from the Frontier to say a few words.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Frontiers International of Plainfield, we just want to mention that we fully endorse this march.
All right, thank you.
When 9 people die in a church, it's time to stop talking and start doing.
Right.
We talk a good game. We've talked for years about what should be done.
Right.
Now we have an opportunity to actually do something.
All right.
So hopefully we will all get together on July 25th and do what I want to say Reverend Hamm, but do what Larry Hamm suggests, and that is get together, all different organizations, all different colors. It makes no difference. It's time to come together and address these issues that are plaguing not just our communities, but our nation. Thank you.
Okay, the next person I would like to bring up is Brother Bill Davis from Rutgers, who was part of the little group that Steve and I helped pull this little press conference together. Bill?
I feel honored to be part of this effort. I grew up in Plainfield, and when John talked about the rebellion that took place in '67, I sat and watched it. That has put me on this path for a long time. I saw people who were really frustrated by what was taking place in Plainfield, and the fact that that time Plainfield was still predominantly white. So I lived through white flight. It's an interesting process. But I also want us to remember that it was 50 years ago when Emmett Till was killed.
Right.
And when Emmett Till was killed, that was the catalyst for the Civil Rights Movement.
That's right. You're right.
And so when Trayvon Martin was killed, when Michael Brown was killed, when we have Ayanna Jones killed, when we think about all the different, particularly young people that have been killed, either by police or would-be police, they have been catalysts for the waking up of this generation. So far too often, people have been critical of this generation. But when we think about the way that young people stood up in Ferguson, when young people stood up in Ferguson, that was the catalyst for people all across the country to start standing up. And so I want us to make sure that when we come together on July 25th, when we think about the contribution of Fannie Lou Hamer, we think about the contribution of the people in SNCC, we think about the people who were riding the buses that were getting bombed by racists 50 years ago. When we think about the Little Rock Nine that faced lynchings and hoses and dogs and all kind of craziness trying to integrate schools, we are bringing all of that history with us when we come to Newark on July 25th. When we think about the rebellion that took place in Newark in the 1960s, that was a catalyst for things that can't happen all across the country. So we are following in a great tradition. And I think sometimes we don't really recognize the tradition that we're following, or the shoulders of the people that we're standing on. And so for me to be part of it, and I want to just make sure that people understand, Larry and I have been working together since 1984. Go back a long time when the first Jesse Jackson campaign happened. We were trying to organize people to register to vote back in '84. And so this journey has been a long journey. It's been one that we've had some ebbs and flows. We've seen some victories and we've seen some defeats. But most importantly for me, it's a journey that we cannot back up from. We have to continue as our ancestors continue to press forward. And so I hope that we will organize as many people as we can, that we will go to Facebook, that we will have leaflets, that we will call people, we will take emails, whatever we can do to get as many people in recognition of the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, to follow that tradition in which we're going to bring thousands and thousands of people to Newark to stand for justice, to make sure that this issue of income inequality, because police really just misbehave in poor communities. They don't go in the rich folks' communities and do the crazy stuff that they do in poor communities. And so when we finally get our economic base in place, when we're finally able to make sure that there are some severe consequences for police that are inappropriate, then we will see significant change. And so I'm hoping that we are going to show the world, July 25th, that New Jersey is ready to make sure that we are going to demand and get justice. Not just demand justice, but get justice.
Brother Bill, thank you. Would like to recognize a few other folks who are here, particularly David Rutherford, who is a member of the Plainfield School Board and a blogger who keeps us informed of all the things we need to know going on around about the city here. I don't know if David wants to say a few words or not.
All right, David.
Yeah, I didn't really plan to speak, and I definitely didn't plan to speak after Larry Hamm. But right now I'm reading this book called Black Against Empire. It's about the beginning of the Black Power movement. And that movement was, the catalyst was police brutality as well, like it is today. And I'm reading the examples of what really started that rebellion, which is was considered the biggest since the Civil War. And a lot of the examples that are given are a lot less than what I see on my Twitter feed nowadays. A lot of the police brutality going on nowadays is a lot worse than what got Watt started, what got rebellions in Oakland started, in New York way back then. And back then they didn't have 1 million people in jail, 1 million black men in jail like now. They had maybe 1/8 of that. So if people rose up and demanded community control of the police then, we certainly should now. And we kind of were fed this narrative that things are getting better all the time. That's kind of what you're starting to do with what society tells you, but economic inequality is worse than it was then. Not any better. So when I'm reading, the point is when I'm reading about rebellion and resistance starting at a better time than we are right now, quite frankly, it makes me want to act, and I'm glad to be part of this effort.
Thank you. I would also like to recognize Cecile Hepburn, who is the grandmother of Rashad Ashford.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
I'm telling you, this is an important time in history.
Yes, it is.
We have got to come out.
Yes,
We
we do.
have got to support each other.
Right.
This isn't just about one nationality.
Right.
This is about all.
Yes, it is.
I lost my grandson at the Hampshire police in September of last year. Don't know who killed him. Don't know why. All I know, and the only information I have, is that I have his body and I've placed it in the ground. To no answers. I can tell you that he was shot in the head 9 times. But no accountability, no answers, no police report, anything. Along with everything else that's going on in the country. All the crime, as we put it, quote unquote, black on black crime. Well, it isn't just black on black crime. It's crime period.
Right, period. Right.
We have got to come out and support this march in order to make change. This isn't about one change. This is about everything changing. There's no reason for a country that's supposed to be the richest country in America to be going through this. We as people deserve to live amongst each other in peace. If I want to come outside and sit on my front porch, I want to sit on my front porch. I don't want to be like the young lady 3 weeks ago that sitting on her front porch and drive-bys and she's deceased. It's not fair to her family. No family should experience what we have experienced. And it's not a walk in our shoes, it's a support. It's we're in this together. This is not one group of people This is everybody. We've got to come together because love is what's going to bring us together.
Right.
And if we love each other and come together as one, we will defeat this broken system.
Right.
But right now, this system is broken.
Yes.
I will continue to fight for justice for my grandson, but I will also continue to fight for change and justice for this country.
Right. Yes.
All right. I would now like to bring on the closer. The brother who writes, is the executive editor of the Black Agenda Report, Brother Glenn Ford.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.
I didn't know I was going to speak, so I'm going to speak very briefly. I know that everybody here, just because you care enough about justice to be here, everybody here probably saw the movie Selma. And of course, Selma was a great moment in 1965, which pushed the country over the hill in terms of getting the Voting Rights Act. And there are many folks who think that that was all black folks needed, was to get the vote, that the movement was over and there was no need for black power, there was no need for an end to income inequality, there was no need to agitate for the kind of country that doesn't participate in wars 24/7 all year long. Some people thought that all we needed was the vote, and all we needed to do was get some congressmen and mayors and city council people elected, and maybe a president one day, and get folks into these corporations, and get more generals appointed in the military, and everything would be fine, and black folks would just be regular citizens of the United States. Well, they were wrong, because the folks who we were agitating against up to 65 did not change after 65. And they decided that if we were not going to stay in our place, they begrudgingly had given us or had allowed us some demands like the right to vote and public accommodations and such, but it was very grudgingly. And they said if we're not going to stay in our place, well then they're going to create a place for us. And that place was the prisons. Their response to these movements, to the civil rights movement, to the black power movement, and to the general movement for economic justice, their response was the mass black incarceration state. So we go from 1970, when there are only about 250,000 people in the federal and state prisons of the country, to a high point just a little while ago of 2.4 million. We go from a situation in mid-1960s when 70% of the prison inmates in the country were white, to a situation in which 70% of the prison inmates in the country are black and brown. This is payback for our movement. And many of our elected officials and our our dignitaries, our rich folks, our folks who many of us would like to look up to and wish we could dress like, wish we had the privileges they have. Many of these folks think that we don't need a movement, as if they are oblivious to the fact that 1 out of 8 prison inmates in the world is an African American. That there are more black and brown people in American prisons than the entire prison population of China, and China has 4.5 times as many people as we have. And what does that mean? That means that if you go by the numbers, by the metrics, as some folks like to say, if you go just by the raw numbers, the United States is the biggest police state in the world. And I know that Plainfield doesn't have as grave a police problem as lots of places, but it is part of the United States. And that means it's part of the biggest police state in the world. And our people are all over this country, and they're catching hell. So we need to be going to Newark, just like folks are coming from all over the country to go to Newark in order not just to speak for conditions or two conditions in Plainfield, but to the conditions of our people all over. Power to the people.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Is there anything else to be said by anyone for the good of the cause?
Getting a double bite, right? I just want to add to the previous remarks and say this march on the 25th is not the end. It's not a one-day affair. This is going to be part of an ongoing process to build a movement that, yes, is for changing the way policing is done in the United States, but the movement is deeper than that. It's about transforming this socio-economic system that we live in. This is what Dr. King was saying at the end of his life. So a lot of people say, well, it's just a one-day. No, it's not just a one-day event. This is going to be part of an ongoing, and when we get to July 25th, we're going to announce next steps to people. It's not just going to be, all right, come to Newark, here's some speeches, and go home. No, we're going to outline a plan for ongoing action to keep the pressure on until we get the types of changes that we need. So I want to assure people that this is about building a movement, because really, the greatest guarantor against police abuse is building a mass movement. Because you can have all kind of laws on the books. They don't have to enforce it. They only enforce the laws when people are vigilant. And that's very important, that this is about building a movement. That's what I just wanted to add.
All right, thank you, Larry. And you do have organizing meetings every Thursday at Abyssinia Baptist Church on West Kennedy Street in Newark, 6:30 every Thursday.
When's your next meeting? Grant.
All right, so again, I'd like to highlight that Thursday, Abyssinia Baptist Church, 6:30. Also, the organizations who have come out to support today, we have the Black Agenda Report Executive Editor. We have Frontiers International. We have the Progressive News Weekly. We have the Justice and Unity Coalition from WBAI Radio. Women in Conversation. United. All right. All right, but let's give us the name of the organization.
United Church of Christ Congregation in Plainfield.
Right, and they canceled the meeting in order to be here, so we appreciate their support. Oh, and to be at the march also. Willa, would you like to say a few words? Or? Okay.
From South Carolina.
All right. Again, thank everyone for coming out. And again, although the problem may not be as severe in Plainfield, as Larry said, is in, and as Glenn said, is in the U.S., and it's a problem across the country. So we need to stand up wherever we are in order to help deal with this issue.